Meghan Markle launched her fashion merchandising app partnership in Australia 2 weeks ago, and sources confirm she's already invested money in the company. If that timeline sounds familiar, it should. The Duchess of Sussex has now cycled through Clever Coffee, a handbag company, a jam business, a children's book, and the 40x40 initiative, each one arriving with fanfare and disappearing without explanation. The common narrative frames Meghan as a serial entrepreneur still searching for her niche, a hustler who simply hasn't found the right fit yet. That framing is generous to the point of fiction. What we're actually witnessing is something far more calculated, a behavioral pattern that has nothing to do with bad luck or market conditions and everything to do with what these ventures are actually designed to accomplish. The Australia trip pulled back the curtain on this pattern in ways Meghan likely didn't intend. Every outfit she wore could be purchased instantly through an app. With Meghan reportedly taking a percentage of each sale, the execution was tone-deaf enough to generate international headlines, particularly when she promoted clothing purchases at a memorial site for Bondi Beach terrorism victims. But the real tell wasn't the bad optics. The real tell was what happened when people asked about Harry's clothes. During the Australia tour, fans flooded social media with questions about where they could buy the shirts and casual looks Harry was wearing. Nothing was listed. Zero monetization of Harry's wardrobe appeared anywhere on the app or through any other channel. This detail might seem minor, but it reveals the entire architecture of how Meghan approaches business ventures. Harry's clothes would have been easier to sell. Genuinely, men's shirts pack flat, require less complicated sizing conversations, and Harry himself has proven willing to participate in this kind of promotion. He actively pushed the narrative that Dior dressed him for the coronation. He wanted that attention. The excuse offered through sources was that promoting Harry's wardrobe isn't his brand, that it's not what Harry does. But Harry literally did exactly that before, which means the real reason lies elsewhere entirely. The ventures don't fail because of trolls or bad timing. They fail because every single one must orbit around Meghan specifically, and that requirement creates structural problems no business strategy can overcome. The evidence has been accumulating for years. Clever Coffee arrived with promises and promptly vanished from her Instagram presence. When was the last time anyone spotted Meghan drinking it publicly? The handbag company she promoted similarly disappeared from rotation. The jam business that consumed so much attention last year has gone entirely unmentioned in recent months. The children's book she authored generated its moment of publicity and then faded from discussion. The 40x40 initiative marking her 40th birthday, which asked 40 friends to donate 40 minutes of mentorship, produced a single announcement video and nothing further. Each venture follows the same trajectory, a burst of attention followed by silence, then replacement with something new. This isn't entrepreneurial experimentation. Experimentation implies learning from previous attempts and applying those lessons forward. Meghan's pattern shows no evidence of adaptation, no indication that she's absorbed what didn't work before. Instead, each new venture simply restarts the cycle at phase 1, the announcement phase where attention concentrates and validation flows freely. The question isn't why these ventures fail. The question is whether failure even matters to the actual purpose they serve. The besties' retreat in Australia exposed the fundamental transaction at work here. Women paid over $3,000 Australian each for what they believed would be a weekend with the Duchess. Meghan appeared for approximately 30 minutes. The organizers reportedly paid around $120,000 for a 90-minute appearance, but Meghan didn't even deliver that full duration. She collected her share and departed for a rugby match with Harry, leaving paying guests confused about what exactly they'd purchased. During her brief appearance, Meghan made a statement that crystallized her entire approach to these ventures. She told the audience, "I've spent all my life investing in women. Can I finally invest in me?" The audacity required to say this to women who had just paid thousands of dollars to be in her presence defies easy description. They had literally invested in her. Their money had funded her appearance fee. The organizers' payment had secured her participation. Yet Meghan stood before them requesting their permission to finally prioritize herself, as though her entire existence hadn't already centered on that exact pursuit. This moment wasn't a misstep. It was Meghan articulating, perhaps accidentally, the actual framework driving every venture she launches. Each business opportunity becomes a vehicle for extracting validation rather than building something sustainable. The jam wasn't really about jam. The coffee wasn't really about coffee. The fashion app isn't really about fashion. These are mechanisms for generating attention that flows toward Meghan, creating moments where she stands at the center receiving affirmation. Once that initial burst fades, once the launch coverage cycles out of the news, the venture loses its purpose from her perspective. Daily jam production doesn't generate headlines. Ongoing coffee partnerships don't produce profile pieces. The work required to sustain a business delivers no narcissistic supply, so interest evaporates. The Netflix experience reportedly illustrated this active with painful clarity. Sources described the production of With Love Meghan as grueling for everyone except Meghan herself. One insider characterized the final product as not worth the effort, noting that Meghan was allegedly a nightmare to work with throughout filming. The show was supposed to showcase Meghan's lifestyle brand, her cooking, her entertaining, her version of gracious living. But lifestyle content requires genuine engagement with the craft, a willingness to learn and be corrected, an openness to feedback about what works and what doesn't. None of those qualities align with Meghan's demonstrated patterns of behavior. When ventures shift from being about Meghan's presence to being about the product's quality, she loses interest at precisely that transition point. The launch is exciting, the work is not. The announcement generates coverage. The execution generates criticism. And criticism, no matter how constructive, how well-intentioned, how necessary for improvement, gets categorized as bullying rather than valuable market research. This classification serves a purpose beyond ego protection. It feeds directly into her most consistent product, the victimhood narrative that has proven more durable than any jam or coffee or fashion app. Meghan's most commercially successful output has been her own persecution story. The Oprah interview monetized her grievances against the royal family. The Netflix documentary monetized the same grievances with additional footage. Harry's memoir monetized their shared sense of mistreatment. Speaking fees at conferences and retreats monetize her status as someone who has allegedly suffered tremendously at the hands of institutions and media. This narrative has genuine commercial value. Book deals, documentary opportunities, paid speaking engagements all flow from maintaining the public perception that Meghan has been uniquely victimized by forces beyond her control. At a youth mental health event in Australia, Meghan claimed to have been the most bullied person in the world, man or woman, for 10 years. The grandiosity of this claim should have disqualified it from serious consideration immediately. 10 years would encompass her entire relationship with Harry, her time as a working royal, and her subsequent years in California. It would require her experience to exceed that of politicians facing assassination attempts, activists imprisoned for their beliefs, and whistleblowers whose lives have been destroyed for speaking truth to power. The claim doesn't hold up to even cursory scrutiny. But factual accuracy isn't the point. The claim serves a narrative function. When ventures fail, when negative coverage accumulates, when criticism mounts, the bullying frame provides insulation. She's not unsuccessful because her products lack substance. She's unsuccessful because trolls have sabotaged her efforts. The jam didn't fail to generate sustainable revenue. It failed because haters attacked her unfairly. The fashion app won't build lasting market share. It will struggle because of coordinated harassment campaigns. Every business outcome can be routed through the victimhood narrative, converted from failure into evidence of persecution. This creates a self-sustaining cycle. Launch a venture, generate attention, collect validation during the announcement phase, lose interest once the hard work begins, watch the venture fade, blame external forces for its decline, and then use that perceived persecution for the next paid appearance, where she can describe her suffering to a sympathetic audience. The ventures aren't the real business, they're content generation for the persecution storyline, providing fresh material for the victimhood narrative that actually pays. The communication patterns Meghan has established reinforce this interpretation. She operates almost exclusively through one-way channels. Comments remain disabled on social media. Press conferences don't happen. Interviews occur only in controlled, therapy-like settings where challenging follow-up questions aren't part of the format. The Besties Retreat exemplified this approach perfectly. Meghan spoke, the audience listened, no substantive dialogue occurred. She delivered her prepared remarks, collected her affirmation, and departed before any genuine exchange could develop. This communication style serves multiple functions simultaneously. It prevents the kind of pushback that might complicate her narrative. It ensures that her version of events enters the public sphere without immediate fact-checking. It creates an asymmetry where she can say whatever she wants, and viewers must do the work of verification after the fact. But it also reveals something about her capacity for the give and take required in actual business relationships. Building a successful venture requires responding to customer feedback, adjusting product offerings based on market response, acknowledging when something isn't working, and pivoting. None of these activities fit within a one-way communication framework. Meghan's psychology, at least as displayed through her public behavior, doesn't seem to permit the flexibility genuine business success demands. Every piece of criticism becomes evidence of bullying rather than data about customer preferences. Every negative review confirms the persecution narrative rather than identifying areas for improvement. The Besties Retreat demonstrated this rigidity in concentrated form. Guests complained almost immediately about the gap between what they expected and what they received. They had paid for a weekend, they received 30 minutes. Sources reported that some attendees began requesting refunds before Meghan had even left the venue. The organizers had promoted the event as an unforgettable weekend designed for women who want to reconnect and recharge, with Meghan featured prominently in the marketing materials. The actual delivery fell catastrophically short of those promises. Questions have emerged about whether the event's marketing violated Australian consumer protection laws. Ticket listings indicated that allocation was exhausted, implying a sold-out event. Photographs from inside the venue showed something different entirely. Estimates placed attendance at fewer than 100 people, with multiple observers noting that tables were only half-dressed to make the sparse crowd appear larger. Reports circulated that tickets had been given away free to hotel workers to fill seats. If the event wasn't actually sold out when it was marketed, that could constitute misleading conduct under Australian consumer law. None of this matters if the goal was never a sustainable events business. If the goal was generating content for victimhood narratives, the retreat succeeded perfectly. Meghan appeared, collected her fee, generated coverage of herself at a women's empowerment event, and departed. The guest complaints provide additional material. When coverage of the retreat disappointment spreads, it can be reframed as more bullying, more trolling, more evidence that Meghan cannot do anything without facing disproportionate criticism. The failure becomes useful precisely because it feeds the persecution narrative that actually generates revenue. Harry's role in all this deserves examination because it illuminates the dynamics at work. Throughout the Australia trip, Harry functioned basically as a minder rather than a partner. At the besties' retreat, he sat in the audience and applauded when Meghan entered. He rose to his feet as she took the stage. He provided the visible support she required for her entrance. When she spoke at other events during the trip, Harry was there, performing devotion for the cameras. But the reverse pattern doesn't hold. When Harry speaks at mental health conferences, Meghan doesn't appear in the audience. When he gave interviews for his memoir, she didn't show up to demonstrate support. The active flows in one direction only. Harry must witness Meghan's appearances, validate her performances, demonstrate that he finds her compelling, even when he's heard the same stories dozens of times. Sources who attended the besties' retreat reported that Harry appeared to be falling asleep during portions of Meghan's remarks. He's heard the narrative before, he knows every beat of every story she tells, but he's required to be present anyway, performing engagement regardless of his actual interest level. The decision to exclude Harry from the fashion app monetization makes sense within this framework. His shirts would have been genuinely easy to sell. Men's casual wear faces fewer fit complications than women's fashion. Harry had already shown willingness to participate in this kind of promotion through his Dior collaboration. Including him would have been smart business, but smart business wasn't the objective. The objective was maintaining Meghan at the center of all attention, all revenue, all focus. Harry's wardrobe generating sales would have diverted some percentage of interest away from Meghan, and that diversion, however small, proved unacceptable. Sources close to the situation have characterized Meghan as unable to tolerate competition in any form. This assessment appears consistently across reporting from multiple outlets over several years. Former staff members, journalists who covered the royal beat during Meghan's working royal period, and observers who have tracked her business ventures all arrive at similar conclusions. Everything must center her. The jam featured her face on the packaging. The cookbook showcased her recipes. The fashion app tracks her outfits specifically. When ventures can't maintain that singular focus, when they require sharing spotlight with collaborators or partners, they become unsustainable for her. This psychological requirement creates a structural ceiling on what Meghan can achieve. Genuinely successful businesses almost always involve collaboration, delegation, and shared credit. Building something that scales requires trusting others to execute, accepting that some decisions will be made without your direct involvement, acknowledging that team members deserve recognition for their contributions. None of these activities seem to fit within Meghan's operational framework. She reportedly struggled with staff during her working royal period precisely because delegation required trusting others to act in her name without constant oversight. The pattern repeats across every domain where she's attempted to build something. The Arkewell Foundation has produced minimal concrete output relative to the attention it generates. Partnerships with Spotify and Netflix have yielded far less content than the contract values suggested. Products launch and fade with no apparent infrastructure for long-term development. Each venture seems designed for the announcement moment rather than the execution phase, optimized for generating initial coverage rather than building sustained market presence. The candle launch represents the next iteration of this cycle. Meghan has introduced candles inspired by her children, with scents named after Archie and Lily. The timing places this product drop just before King Charles's American visit, ensuring coverage of Meghan's maternal branding coincides with royal family activities. The children's titles feature prominently in the marketing, Prince Archie and Princess Lily appearing explicitly despite previous claims that the family sought privacy for the kids. The trajectory is predictable from here. The candles will generate announcement coverage. Meghan will appear in interviews discussing how motherhood inspired this product, how her children bring such light into her life, how she wanted to share some version of that warmth with her followers. Then the actual work of running a candle business will become apparent. Quality control, fulfillment logistics, customer service, inventory management, seasonal production planning. None of these activities generate narcissistic supply. Interest will fade. The candles will quietly disappear from prominence, replaced by whatever comes next. The fashion app partnership will follow the same arc. Reports will emerge over the coming months that engagement has dropped, that the technology partnership isn't meeting projections, that Meghan's interest has shifted elsewhere. Within 6 to 8 months, the app will likely vanish from her promotional activities entirely, joining Clever Coffee and the handbag company in the graveyard of abandoned ventures. No public acknowledgement of its ending will occur. It will simply stop appearing in her content, replaced by whatever new opportunity promises fresh attention. The children represent the next frontier for monetization, and that shift appears already underway. The candle launch using their names and identities tests whether the public will accept more direct commercialization of Archie and Lily. The Easter video showing what appeared to be Lily running through grass served a similar trial balloon function. Each incremental step gauges reaction, determining how much the audience will tolerate before pushing back exceeds acceptable levels. This represents both Meghan's diminishing options and her most reliable remaining asset. She has largely exhausted her personal narratives. Actress Meghan provided material for a while, but those stories dried up. Royal Meghan generated enormous interest, but her working royal period lasted only 18 months, and she's been telling those stories for years now. Lifestyle Meghan produced the Netflix series, but that hasn't opened doors to the broader lifestyle empire she apparently sought. Wellness Meghan is the current iteration, but wellness content requires expertise she hasn't demonstrated and authenticity she struggles to project. The children offer something different. They grow, they change, they have birthday milestones and school transitions and developmental achievements. They provide renewable content in ways that Meghan's other narratives don't. The question is whether monetizing them directly will generate the backlash that constrains other ventures, or whether Meghan's audience will accept this escalation as natural celebrity parenting. The underlying pattern won't change regardless of which ventures succeed or fail in commercial terms. Meghan will continue launching new opportunities that center her image and validate her status. Each launch will generate its moment of attention. Each will fade once the work phase begins. Each failure will be attributed to external forces rather than structural problems with the approach itself. And each attribution will feed the victimhood narrative that remains her most consistent product. The difference between Meghan and genuinely successful entrepreneurs isn't ambition or even talent. Plenty of entrepreneurs have major egos and still build lasting companies. The difference is capacity for sustained effort without constant external validation. Building something real requires years of work that generates no headlines, no coverage, no applause. It requires tolerance for criticism and willingness to adjust based on feedback. It requires accepting that sometimes the product matters more than the person behind it. Nothing in Meghan's public behavior suggests she possesses these capacities. Her ventures will continue to launch and fade because they're designed for a purpose they successfully serve, generating moments of attention that feed her need for validation. The actual products are irrelevant. The jam, the coffee, the fashion app, the candles. These are props in a performance about Meghan herself. They exist to justify her presence in spaces where attention concentrates. Once that justification expires, so does her interest in maintaining them. The Australia trip stripped away the pretense more effectively than any previous venture failure. Watching Meghan promote clothing purchases at a terrorism memorial site, then abandon paying guests after 30 minutes to attend a rugby match, illustrated the actual priorities operating beneath the branding language. She collected what she came for and departed. The women who paid for her presence served their function and were discarded. The fashion app served its function and will be discarded in turn. Everything and everyone exists in relation to what Meghan needs in the moment, and nothing commands sustained attention once that need has been met. The prediction here requires no particular insight. The fashion app will fade within months. The candles will cycle through their announcement coverage and disappear. The children will be monetized more directly as other assets exhaust their value. The victimhood narrative will continue regardless of actual circumstances because it remains commercially viable. And Harry will continue appearing at events where Meghan performs, demonstrating devotion for cameras while looking increasingly like a man who signed a contract he can't escape. What won't change is the fundamental architecture. Meghan cannot build sustainable ventures because sustainability requires qualities her public behavior doesn't display. She cannot sustain attention on anything that isn't herself. She cannot tolerate collaboration that requires sharing spotlight. She cannot accept criticism without routing it through persecution frameworks. She cannot do the unglamorous work that actual businesses demand. These aren't temporary limitations she might overcome with the right opportunity or the right partner. They appear to be structural features of how she operates, visible across years of ventures and relationships that follow identical patterns. The common narrative suggests Meghan simply hasn't found her niche yet. The evidence suggests she's found it exactly. Her niche is generating attention that flows toward herself, and she's extremely effective at it. The ventures aren't failing. They're succeeding at their actual purpose, and then being replaced once that purpose has been served. Understanding this distinction reveals why the cycle will continue indefinitely, and why expecting different results from the next launch misreads what these launches are actually designed to accomplish. The comment section is yours. Tell me where you stand, and subscribe for the next update.